all your weather coverage. In today's video, we'll be taking you through my fall forecast for 2023 through September, October, and November, and sharing with you my thoughts on this upcoming fall season. Before we get into the video, make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel so you get daily weather updates on this channel. I cover all of North America, including southern Canada, the United States, and the tropics on this channel, and I will also be covering the winter forecast in the next couple of months as well after this video. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and also press the thumbs up button. It helps to get all of this information to as many people as possible on the platform, so I definitely appreciate that as well. So let's kind of dive into the nuts and bolts of the forecast here, and first we're going to look at the El Nino conditions currently. Now this is the sea surface temperature anomaly currently across portions of the equatorial Pacific. And wherever you see the orange color here just west of South America, that is where we look for El Nino or even La Nina conditions, depending on what phase of climate we are in. Currently, we are in an El Nino phase of climate. We just got out of a 3-year La Nina, believe it or not, and now we are moving into the El Nino phase. And that is where we see the warmer waters across the equatorial Pacific, and they are actually pretty robust out here. Very strong warm water signal here, about as deep of red as you're going to see on the chart. So this is rapidly intensifying. And it also correlates here to the chart as well. So you see a chart with a bunch of numbers. I know it looks confusing, but I'm going to explain it here, is that the positive values are generally trending more towards El Nino conditions, especially once you get to plus 0.5 and higher. And then at 0, that's more of ENSO neutral conditions, kind of between El Nino and La Nina. And then once you get to negative values, especially negative 0.5 or lower, that is usually La Nina conditions correlated here on the map. So taking you all the way back to the late spring and through the middle of summer here, we did start off here more at ENSO neutral conditions, but rapidly, especially through late May into early June, got into El Nino status there in early June and have been there ever since, and actually slowly still intensifying through the late summer here and into early August. So that is something to keep an eye on, as we are at plus 0.96 here currently this morning. Looking here at the consolidation of all of the climate models that they put together to see where this El Nino is heading, it looks like we are on pace for at least a strong El Nino potential with plus 1.5, even some models getting very bullish up toward plus 2 range here. So, and that would take us into the heart of fall and into even the heart of winter as well. So right now, we're getting very close to plus 1, and then as we go over the next couple of months through September, October, and into November, this will likely climb closer to plus 1.5. So the El Nino is actually strengthening, even slowly so, as we go through the fall and into the winter months. And looking at El Nino conditions and typically what a classic El Nino could bring, not all El Ninos are the same. I do want to note that, but we do see with more of the classic El Nino, especially the stronger El Ninos, are correlated with more warmer temperatures across southwestern Canada, up here into Alaska and the northern United States, with more of that polar jet streak further to the north and east. And that would also bring drier weather, typically with a less active jet stream across the Ohio Valley and into parts of the Great Lakes region, whereas we have a very persistent and extended Pacific jet stream underneath that, with wet conditions across portions of California with more atmospheric river events, and also wetter conditions for our southern areas like Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and along the Gulf Coast and into the southeast, and then on up the eastern seaboard to Maine. That's where we see also cooler conditions with a classic El Nino. And again, mostly this is correlated with stronger El Nino events. Weaker El Ninos have kind of been a little bit more mishmash between these type of signals here, where we have more of a weaker signal of an El Nino. Sometimes we get wetter conditions up here where it says dry, and drier conditions underneath. It just depends on how it correlates with this year. And another monkey wrench that is thrown in the forecast here for this fall, and it kind of can override El Nino at times, is our sea surface temperatures across portions of the western Atlantic. Now, this is very important when looking at temperature forecasts across the contiguous United States. The Gulf of Mexico Mexico, as everybody probably knows by now, is boiling. We got temperatures of 30 to 35 plus degrees Celsius here. That's well into the 80s, into the 90s, and it's not really too much verified yet, but even close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, folks, and that is extremely warm waters, and you see that extending down into the Caribbean and portions of the western tropical Atlantic as well. So there is an abundance of warm waters, and this could correlate to a much warmer fall than many think across portions of the United States as we move through September, October, and November. And looking here first, this is the CAN-SIPS model, does very well with the weather pattern over the next few months. So let's look at that here for first September 2023. This is next month, and you start to see a little bit more ridging building across our southern and southeastern areas, and you start to see building heights across the Gulf Coast and into portions of southern plains. And where we see that, that's a higher correlation of some heat building across those areas. So my temperature forecast for September of 2023 does lean more above average for our southern and central plain states and into the Tennessee and perhaps even the lower Ohio River Valley as well. And even where you see the yellow, that's at least slightly a nod toward above normal temperatures there. And then I think more average conditions across the Northeast, as some of these troughs in eastern Canada could continue to dig down and produce at times some cooler shots of air from Maine down into the Delmarva region. And then also from the northern Rockies into the western high plains at times, we could see more average conditions because of those cooler temperatures moving down as we go through the month of September. So that's my September forecast. Looking at the precipitation forecast here, I do lean above normal, at least slightly so, for much of the eastern two-thirds of the country, really along and east of the Mississippi River. That's where I think we're going to have more of that active storm track, a lot of rain events, possibly even some scattered severe weather events, pretty frequent across portions of the Ohio Valley down into the lower Mississippi Valley through the month of September. As we start to see a transition slowly to those cooler months, more average conditions in the white color here, mainly across the Great Plains, the upper Midwest, and the Pacific Northwest, also down here into portions of Florida and the extreme southeastern areas. And then below normal precipitation, at least slightly so, is favored for much of the Four Corners region, Nevada, Southern California, and up into southern Wyoming as well, with not so much of a monsoon season. And that I think continues as we go into early fall. As we get rid of the monsoon season, we still lean below normal across those areas. Now, as we turn to October, you still see a little bit of a nod for that building heights across the Rio Grande Valley down here and near the Gulf Coast, but not as strongly correlated as it was in September. We start to see more building heights, however, across the Pacific Northwest and our western states as we have a stronger signal for high pressure building into the eastern Pacific here and more low pressure systems across the eastern United States as we go in towards October. So let's share with you my temperature forecast for October 2023. I think we're leaning more average again across the Northeast down into the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Ohio Valley there, especially the eastern Ohio Valley. Again, those low pressure systems will be hanging around eastern Canada, not the entire month, but when you average the entire month out, there'll be a lot of cooler air, so that will get us back down to average. Slightly above average in the yellow here along and west in the Mississippi River, and then well above average likely, especially across the west coast and into portions of the southern plains, Four Corners region, with that building high pressure system across the eastern Pacific, giving us some building heights here, and that is correlated with warmer temperatures than normal as we go into October. Then as we go into the precipitation forecast for October, I think it's going to be leaning below normal, slightly so, across the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast because we have a lot of sinking air with those high pressure systems. It's going to be tough for a while to get some precipitation out here. We still could get some rain and snow at times in the higher elevations, especially some snow, but I think it will be tough at times to get that precipitation to reach the ground. And then as we see here across the Four Corners region on up into the northern plains and around those areas here into the Northeast, more average conditions for you folks here, and then above average in between from the Great Plains on up here into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, where I think a more of an active storm track will set up. And this could actually provide us with our first chances for some snowflakes across these areas, especially the northernmost regions, as we go through late October toward Halloween. And then I think below normal precipitation for much of the southeast into North Florida as we go through October. And now, finally, the last month here of the forecast is November 2023. We're still seeing a correlation of some well above average height building across portions of the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada, and that will kind of translate downstream a little bit, more troughing across the east. So I think for my November forecast for temperatures, we're leaning well above average here as the El Nino continues to strengthen here. I did kind of correlate that into this forecast that El Nino is going to be pretty strong, I think, by November. So well above average temperatures up here into the Pacific Northwest and into the Rockies areas, and really anywhere west of the Mississippi River can expect to at least see slightly to well above average temperatures through the month of November. Average conditions from the central Great Lakes down to the Gulf Coast and the Tennessee Valley, and then slightly below normal temperatures for the I-95 corridor, the Northeast, New England, and down into portions of the Carolinas as we go through November. And that's with that troughing across the east. We see more average conditions for precipitation building back into the Pacific Northwest, a little below average precipitation signature here from the northern plains back into the central Rockies. I think it will be tough to get some heavier rain events in this area, although it's not out of the realm. A couple of events will be possible, but just below average precipitation all told through November. We start to see a higher signal of the El Nino strengthening, so we might start to see our precipitation and maybe atmospheric rivers starting to develop here as we get later into November across southern California, southern Nevada, and through the southern Four Corners region. That could translate into West Texas, and then translate downstream. We could have well above normal precipitation for much of the Dixie Alley region, Tennessee Valley, on up into the mid-Atlantic, and this could even extend into the Northeast as well, with at least slightly above average precipitation going through November. And this could be a signal for maybe a few snowstorms along the way as we have those below normal temperatures favored with this well above average precipitation signal as well. So something to keep an eye on for November. But now let's look here at our first frost and freeze conditions. So this is a map showing your climatological date of your first 32 degrees Fahrenheit freeze. That's a freeze, folks. And we start to see that here, and the key is up here at the top of the screen. And usually across portions of the mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, and getting into the Central Plains in the green, that's around the middle of October, give or take here a couple of weeks. Where you see the blues, that's more into September here. And then across the southern United States, where you see the oranges and yellows here, that's a little bit toward early to mid-November for your average mean 32 degrees Fahrenheit freeze across those areas. And the reason why I think this could be an interesting setup into fall, September into October of 2023 here, as you go to the northern hemisphere, and those temperature anomalies will be cooling off here as they typically do into the cold season across these areas. I think it's going to pull down a signal for more of those low pressure systems in central and eastern Canada that we've been seeing a couple times here this summer, and that will continue into the early and middle fall as well. And that could bring some cool shots of air down as we especially get into early and mid-October. I think that's the kind of time frame that we're keeping an eye on. So my frost and freeze forecast for the entire fall, I think in the dark blue here, it's very early. I think we have a very early frost and freeze on a widespread scale across the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa, and around the Great Lakes region, the upper Midwest. I think we're going to have a lot of early freezes and frosts up here. I still think we have a little bit more of some early freezes and frosts across the Rockies, down into parts of the southern plains toward the Red River there and through the Ohio Valley and into New England. I think we still have an early frost and freeze there, but it's more going to be on time, more or less, in these areas in white with average timing for that frost and freeze as we go through fall. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for the fall months moving forward. And for anybody curious for my fall severe weather forecast, I know we've had a lot of severe weather this summer. Transitioning into fall, it couldn't be difficult to pinpoint where severe weather will be, but given there's going to be a trough up into eastern Canada, that could swing lots of cold fronts through portions of the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the southern United States here. So I think in the yellow, that's a low probability or confidence of severe weather as we go through the fall. And the orange, a much higher chance of seeing severe weather events here from the southern Great Lakes, parts of the lower Midwest, and then down the Mississippi Valley region into the middle and lower Mississippi Valley through the fall months. This could indicate more of a significant severe weather event or two with enhanced or moderate risk or higher potential as we go into that transition between September into October. Look for the potential for a higher episode of severe weather potential across especially the Ohio Valley into portions of the Missouri Valley and lower Midwest as that transition between the warmer air and cooler air with these cold fronts come down. Look for that late September and into October. Now I'm looking at winter storm confidence. I know we're getting closer towards where we start to see the snowflakes. Through September, we're not really seeing any areas impacted by any snow, maybe some snowflakes at times late September into the higher elevations, but it wasn't enough to really highlight an area for any confidence in winter storms. That changes though in October. We start to see more potential for snows, at least a low chance here across portions of the Rockies, traditionally where we start to see more snowflakes there, and then across the Northeast New England and down into the eastern Ohio Valley, parts of the mid-Atlantic there, a low probability with some cooler weather. We have the troughs out here, so we could start to turn the rain over to snow, especially later into October from about the 15th of October onward toward Halloween, so that will be something to keep an eye on. Possibly a Halloween snowstorm somewhere up here. That would not be out of the realm of possibility. Then as we go forward with my winter storm confidence for November, it builds to medium across the Northeast into the eastern Ohio Valley and southern Great Lakes region. I think we're going to have an active jet stream underneath there, and with the moisture pulling up from the Gulf and from the eastern Pacific, all told with the cool air, it gives us a little bit more confidence in some snow going through November, and we could have a hefty snowstorm or two across this region, especially that I-95 corridor as we go into November. And again, low probability around the Rockies, traditionally where we see those higher elevation snows, and down near the Denver region, Cheyenne, Wyoming, those areas as we go through November. But here's my total fall forecast breakdown for 2023. We're going to start out west here in the red, anywhere really across the Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, trending very warm this fall. It's going to be a very warm fall, especially the deeper we get into fall. It's trending well above average, especially October into November. And again, compared to average, there will be some cooler air at times, but most of fall will be very warm for you folks out west. Over here, over the top into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes region, it will start off warm for the first half of fall, but then trend cold very quickly, I think, September into October, as we kind of transition with more cold fronts and possibly some snowflakes at times into October, possibly even before Halloween up here, with more frosts and freezes becoming frequent across these areas into October and November. And then warm and active across these orange areas, Arizona and into the southern and central plains. It will be warm, it will be active. There could be a few severe weather events along the way, but lots of rain, I think, through the fall, all told, across this region with some warm and muggy weather. A more average fall conditions down here from Arkansas, Louisiana, eastward along the Gulf Coast into Florida and portions of the Carolinas, especially South Carolina into Georgia. That's where I expect more average fall conditions. We will have to watch out, though. September, we could be seeing potentially some tropical weather moving off of the western Atlantic. And with those warm sea surface temperatures, that will be something to keep an eye on. But generally, I do think an average fall season for you. And then in the green here from the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast, New England, these areas will see wetter conditions throughout the fall. Lots of rain, and toward the end of fall with the cooler weather moving in, I think we could start to see more mixed precipitation, sleet, freezing rain, snow, or all snow, and possibly a decent snowstorm or two as we go through the November timeframe. So that will certainly be something to keep an eye on going through the fall season. Well, if you want additional weather forecast updates here alongside this video, hit the description down below the video to find the link to Twitter, and you can follow me there at hweather420. I do appreciate that, and I do post on that platform fairly frequently throughout the season as well. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching today's fall forecast. I'll have another update for you guys with the winter forecast here in a little while as well on this channel, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.